Good morning and welcome to week 7 of Media Management. I hope you got a lot out of the last couple of chapters dealing with entrepreneurship and innovation. These are two chapters that I find very interesting, and given the changing media landscape, one of the things that we're learning is these are going to be critical chapters to think about. Sometimes whenever you get started in the industry, you may think about being an entrepreneur instead of going to work for a company. I have several students who they want to be their own boss. I was just talking to a young man yesterday. I took my sports broadcasting class up to the Missouri Mavericks game. One of my graduates is a part-time videographer for them, and he was talking about that he doesn't want to work for a team, doesn't want to work for a television station, doesn't want to work for a production house. He wants to be his own boss, and so he's having to learn to be entrepreneurial and learn about taxes and learn about benefits and learn about budgeting and planning and bidding jobs and those types of things. So it's something he's really interested in. He's thinking about coming back to graduate school so he can learn a little bit more about this. So for some people, that's the way they want to go. For others, like me, they want the stability of having an employer that they work with. They're consistent. The employer takes care of all of your benefits. The employer takes care of all the scheduling and all that sort of thing. You go do the work. So that's who I am. That's where I'm more comfortable. But many of you may have that spirit that you want to be entrepreneurial. And you may have to learn to be innovative. You may have to develop your own product or develop your own way of doing things. So that's what these chapters are dealing with. And I hope you got a lot out of them. I know at least one of you wasn't real pleased with them. Maybe others. I'm looking forward to reading your chapter summaries and reflections. I do want to apologize. I told you last week that I was going to try and get you some guiding questions for those chapters posted on Blackboard. I'm sorry, the week just got away from me and I didn't get that done. But you've done a nice job with the summaries without my comments. So I'm sure they'll be just fine without whatever I had to ask you about. Okay, so this week, as we get into it, I want to share a couple other texts that I have used in my study dealing with innovation specifically. This one's called The Myths of Innovation from Scott Birkin. It deals with, we have these preconceived notions of when innovation is and what it takes. And Birkin deals with a lot of these things. Some of the chapters include there's a method for innovation. There's not one tried and true method. It depends on who you are, what you're trying to innovate, and how you work best. That you need to be the lone inventor, that collaboration isn't necessary. The best ideas always win. Not necessarily. Sometimes it's the ideas that aren't the best, but that have been able to evolve and that you've been able to stay with. So this is a really good book if you're interested in innovation. One of my favorite books that I've ever read dealing with these types of things, The Diffusion of Innovation by Everett Rogers, and he deals with all kinds of concepts about how innovation is diffused into society, how it becomes adopted. Deals a lot with ways that we may think that it's best, that innovation is going to work best, but it has unintended consequences. One of the anecdotal pieces that he gives to this text is some individuals who were innovating a way to get water from one source to another in Africa, and because the women were having to carry water for several miles, having to carry it out in buckets for several miles and bring it back to their village, and so some innovators came in and developed a pipeline. Well, what happened was that pipeline ended up wasting a lot of water, made the village very, very muddy because they knocked the spigot off because it wasn't getting the water out fast enough, was creating these long lines where there was some dissension, and where the women used to go with their families and they would gather the water and it became a very social time, that was gone. So sometimes we think we have these great innovations, the best innovations. Turns out not so much because of unintended consequences. One of the chapters in Rogers' book, The Innovation Decision Process, I find that one really interesting because it talks about how we make those decisions and how we work through those and the elements that need to be in place for an innovation to actually take root and to be successful. So if you're into the innovation chapter, if you're really interested in that, this is another great book to take a look at. Okay? All right. This week, I am only going to ask you for one case study, because that case study is going to be rather in-depth. It's case 4.2, Developing the Business Plan. It's from the chapter on entrepreneurship. I want you to take a look at that. It's in-depth. It's going to ask you to do a little bit of research, but you are working with somebody else's business plan that they've been entrepreneurial and developed their own media outlet, and now we want you to help them fix some of the problems they have. So that one's going to be a little in-depth. For those of you in graduate school, this is kind of a nice pretest to your final project where you are going to develop a business plan. So For those of you in undergrad, this is a stab at doing a business plan. Okay, so only that one case study. We'll cover innovation a little bit more with the discussion board this week. I have a video from TED Talks that's dealing with innovation. I want you to watch that and give me your feedback. It's kind of open-ended. What did you think from it? He makes a couple of comments about media. I think one time he talks about telecommunication. Another time he talked about, I believe it was video games. So he talks a little bit about media, but not really all that in depth. But that's okay, because you can apply the concepts to media. Okay, he starts out talking about mountain bikes and how the mountain bike came about, if that gives you any indication of the direction he went with it. One thing I do want to point out with your case study, and I made this comment on several of yours from your case studies from Chapter 3, when you're doing the case study, part of the idea behind this is pull concepts from the text, either from the chapter we're currently reading or from previous chapters. Quote it, give me an in-text citation of where it came from. But part of the idea is to take what you've read in the chapters and then apply it as you answer the questions. So I do need you to give me some references to your text. I know you're applying the concepts, but part of academic writing is supporting your argument, supporting your concepts or your ideas with evidence. And so do please start including that in your case studies this week. Okay? All right, so case study 4.2, doing the business plan, and then your discussion board, watching the video from TED Talks, and then giving me your responses. Both assignments due by midnight on Sunday. Do keep working on your midterm projects. If you do have questions on those, please reach out to me. I've already had one student contact me and asked me to do a little brainstorming session with her, so I'd be happy to do that with anybody else. Okay? But again, other questions, email or give me a call or stop on by. Have a great week.